ability to write in this country has become an absolute embarrassment. But we can change that. We can change that with us, and we can change that with our kids. And I'm not talking about using ChatGPT. I'm talking about an old technique that has been done for generations and generations and generations that's become a little bit of a lost art to everyone except for the homeschooling world and prolific actual writers. Today, we're going to talk about how to do copy work, not just for your kids and doing it with your kids, but also for you so that we can improve with our kids. So, welcome to the School to always amused whenever I'm on social media or I hear comments to homeschoolers about how homeschoolers are not capable of teaching their children because they aren't official teachers, quote unquote, quote. And yet we are getting our butts handed to us in the United States as far as education goes. And the last several weeks, I've started deep diving once again into the education system. I've been reading the book, The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America by Charlotte Thompson Isbert. She was a senior policy advisor for the U.S. Department of Education. And she goes through just year by year about what was done to the U.S. Department of Education, like what was done to United States education, and beginning pre 20th century, just a little bit before the 20th century, and then really hammering when a lot of the big horrible changes happened in the early part of the 20th century. And so, in conjunction with this, and y'all, I didn't think I could get more angry or more sick. And oh my gosh, yes, you can. I'll be talking about mathematics here again in the next few weeks because because of some of the things that I read in this book from original sources she cites the original sources where they talk about what they wanted to do and how they wanted to do it to separate children from their families, to dumb down children, and they weren't even secret about it. And this one passage I was reading to my husband last night about it was written in 1923 about what they wanted to do with mathematics. And I was totally, totally dumbfounded. So the funny thing is okay, I'll rewind. Several years ago, my husband and I bought a house from this gentleman, and he was a little bit of a hoarder. And one of the conditions of us buying the house was that he was going to leave most of the stuff. Like he only wanted to take a little bit. He found his stuff very overwhelming. And so he was like, this is the stuff I'm going to move, and you guys can keep the rest. And we're like, awesome. And it took truckloads to the dump and had to get dumpsters and the whole nine yards because there was so much stuff there that was, not worth anything. But he left a series of books. I'll show you here for those that are going to be watching this on YouTube. He left a series of books from the mid to late 1800s. This one is Higher Arithmetic. And so as I'm reading through these books, I showed some of these books to my 23-year-old son. And there's books on physics. There's books on the science and the arts. There's books on algebra, arithmetic. And my son and I are flipping through the books, and he's like, oh my gosh, like if I was taught math this way, I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more. Anyway, so I'm going to be discussing that in the future because I've got more research to do. But one of the things that has happened is I've started looking at our ability to write. And now with the advent of AI, so many kids are turning to that to write that we are losing a beautiful ability to write and write well. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast any amount of time, you may have heard me talk about, like, I've always felt like I was a terrible writer because of something that a professor told me. He said on one of my papers, it was my freshman year of college, and he said, I wish, it was my humanities professor. He said, I wish you'd write as intelligently as you think, which is, I don't know if that's like a left-handed compliment, but it was a slap in the face to me because I thought I was a decent writer. And it's taken me all these years to come to grips with that. I am not a bad writer, even to the fact that it took me months to be able to write my first newsletter for School to Homeschool, which you can sign up for at schooltohomeschool.com, because I kept thinking, if I write, people are going to think I'm stupid. They're going to see that I'm not very smart. And I didn't think it was something that I can improve. And yet here I am, later, and exciting news. I am in the thick of writing a book about education and the homeschooling process and all of that good stuff, which will become available at the beginning of the new year, or beginning-ish of the new year. So this has got me thinking, and then I've gone down the rabbit hole with writing and becoming an effective writer. And yet, I look at how students write today, and it's not good. People don't communicate in written form very well. And that, again, we can go right back to John Dewey at the turn of the 20th century. We can go right back to John D. Rockefeller, and we can go right back to all of these progressive educators who wanted to dumb us down. And I would say that they have done a really, really great job at doing it. We have become a nation of absolute idiots, if you don't mind me saying so. All you have to do is turn on TikTok, and it's pathetic, right? All we want to do is be entertained. We don't ever want to be bored. We're okay scrolling for hours. We're okay being entertained. We're okay letting AI take over our mental capacities. Not that I'm against AI, right? There are definitely benefits to having AI, but when we start using it and we start losing skills because we're not using it, I think it'll cause our demise. So this has got me thinking about writing, and I've gone down writing rabbit holes and effective, like what makes an effective writer, and this and that and the other. So much so that the workshop that I did, this past workshop that I did for the month of October, was on teaching children writing, narration, dictation, and copywork. And today I want to talk about copywork specifically, because this is one of those things that, as I've been doing a deep dive into the history of our system, this is something that has been lost, but yet it's generations old, right? Which has blown me away. So I want to talk about copywork. Again, I did a whole workshop on it, how to teach narration, dictation, and copywork. But for you and I, like, one of the beauties of homeschooling is that you and I get to learn alongside of our children and get to be excited about learning. And here I am, 48 years old, realizing I do not have to be a bad writer. There are things that I can do to improve my writing skills. I think, yes, there are people who are naturally gifted in different areas, but as with anything, we can improve our writing skills just like we can improve anything if we know what to do to practice, which led me to copywork. Again, I feel like copywork is like a hidden gem of the homeschooling world that the homeschoolers know about, but not everyone else does. So what is copywork? So today we're going to talk about how to improve not only our children's writing ability, but our own writing ability, because it's so important that we know how to communicate via the written word. It is so important. So copywork, what is it? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. Copywork is the discipline of copying another writer's work word for word. Why is copywork effective? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, it helps to focus on granularity. Copywork forces a writer to slow down and to scrutinize each word and sentence rather than just glossing over them as we might do if we're reading a text. Imprinting skills, it helps us to imprint the mechanics of good writing onto the writer's mind and body, building a foundation for their own creative work. Learning from the best, it provides a direct way to learn from the techniques of great authors, allowing writers to internalize their methods and apply them to their own writing. Essentially, when we have to physically copy somebody else's work, we start to see their cadence. We start to see like correct grammar. We start to see correct spelling. And that heightens our own as we mimic what they're doing. And I think it helps us find our own voices, right? Our own literary voice as we copy another person's writing. Now, I'm not talking about plagiarism. I'm talking about the actual act of copying it for personal benefit to get better, not so you can publish it, but it's a legitimate practice that you do. And again, you could do it typing or you can do it by hand to get better. So here are some notable authors who are big advocates of copywork. Benjamin Franklin was a big proponent of copywork. Again, Benjamin Franklin lived in the 18th century, my friends, and he was doing copywork. That's how he improved his ability to write. He came from a super poor family, and his education was so limited, and yet he became such a prolific writer and statesman. Why? Because he did things that worked, things that we can do. Here we go. So I'm going to read some more authors who advocate copywork. Hunter S. Thompson, author of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and The Rum Diary. He says, I just wanted to feel what it felt like to write that well. I just type out pages of The Great Gatsby or A Farewell to Arms just to get the feel of it inside me. Jack London, The Call of the Wild, White Fang. London reportedly copied out works of Kipling and Stevenson to absorb their rhythm and structure. Like we're talking, he'd copied 20 pages. Robert Louis Stevenson, author of Treasure Island, Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He said, whenever I read a book or a passage that particularly pleased me, in which a thing was said or an effect rendered with propriety, in which there was either some conspicuous force or some happy distinction in the style, I must sit down at once and set myself to ape that quality. He'd copy it. Ray Bradbury, Fahrenheit 451 and The Martian Chronicles. If you want to write well, steal from the best, copy their styles, learn how they structure their sentences, then make it your own. While not explicitly, okay, so that's Ray Bradbury. Cormac McCarthy, author of The Road and Blood Meridian. While not explicitly quoted on copywork, McCarthy is known for intensely studying and absorbing the styles of Faulkner and Melville before developing his own. Stephen King, the horror novelist. I'm not a horror fan, but I found what he had to say very interesting. He wrote The Shining, It, and The Dark Tower, amongst other things. You cannot hope to sweep someone else away by the force of your writing until it has been done to you. The best way to learn to write well is to read and copy the work of those who have done it best. Neil Gaiman, American Gods, Coraline, and The Sandman. Most of what I learned about writing fiction, I learned by writing bad fiction first and by copying out passages that I loved. And that was paraphrased. Ernest Hemingway, author of The Old Man and the Sea, and For Whom the Bell Tolls. When I was learning to write, I'd copy out passages of writers like Turgenev because he wrote so well. Dan Brown, author of The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. Brown has mentioned copying passages from great thrillers to study pacing and tension building techniques. It goes on and on. Robert Greene, The 48 Laws of Power. This is my 23-year-old's favorite author. By the way, if you're learning to craft the craft of writing, copy out entire books by great authors. You will absorb their style, their way of thinking, and eventually find your own voice. Benjamin Franklin. I took some of the papers and making short hints of the sentiment in each sentence, I laid them by a few days, and then without looking at the book, I tried to complete the papers again by expressing each hinted sentiment at length. C.S. Lewis, author of the Chronicles of Narnia and many other works. The great man, just to be understood, must be translated into the vulgar tongue. If we do this with Homer, Shakespeare, or Virgil, we shall find we are learning to write. And there's several others, but I'm going to end with Ayn Rand. I trained, and she wrote Atlas Shrugged. I trained myself to write by copying the best passages from Victor Hugo and Dostoevsky. Some of the greatest authors that the world has seen copied other people's writing to learn their own voices. We can do the same, and we can inspire and do the same with our children. So how do we do copy work? Let's talk about it for just a second here. Okay, the first thing that we want to do copy work. And again, this is a practice that you and I can do ourselves to improve ourselves, because one of the blessings of homeschooling, once again, is that we get to learn with our children, not separate from them or stop learning altogether, but we get to learn with them. Number one, you're going to choose a passage. You're going to select a well-written passage from a book, a poem, or other literary work that models good composition. So let's hit the classics, y'all. I was reading or I was watching a YouTube video where an author was talking about how a study was done, and they found that there's even college students now, like that were English majors, who had a hard time reading a book all the way through. Like their attention span was so low that they couldn't they struggled getting through a whole book. And so they'd have to give the students passages, and these are English majors. They'd have to give the students short passages to read because they couldn't get through a whole book. Like, our attention span has been hijacked. Our ability to sit for long periods of time has been hijacked, to think and to work our brains. The same. And I'm going to put I can't remember the name of the YouTube video, but I'm going to put it in the show notes because it was well worth listening to as she discusses what has happened to reading and writing in the United States. So we've got to choose good writing. I think that's what's, we have libraries full of bad writing, right? But there's also good writing. And so if we look to the classics, what I was going to say is, we are finding college students having a hard time reading classic texts, period, because they struggle with the language, they struggle with the attention span, they struggle with all of those things. But we ourselves can go back and learn the classics and come to love the classics and see the cadence and the beauty that are written in the classics, and they're classics for a reason. Recently, I was reading a book called The Blue Castle by L. Montgomery, who wrote Anne of Green Gables. And at first it was hard, like the language is a little bit hard to understand. But as I got more and more into the novel, I was swept away in the story, but I was intrigued by the beauty and her command of the language and the cadence of the writing. It was so refreshing from some of the contemporary novels of today. And there's still some really great authors today, but for the most part, I feel like we've lost beautiful writing, and now we're turning to AI, which is garbage. Okay, so we're going to choose a passage of a well-written passage from a book, a poem, or another literary work, scripture, that models good composition. And then for our kids, we're going to display the passage. For my older kids, I literally give them the book and be like, this is what you're going to do. And I kind of circle it. But for us, we can open the book. If we're doing it for ourselves, we're doing it with the kids. For little kids, we can write it out for them. for them to see. And then we read the passage aloud with the child, discussing any interesting vocabulary or concepts. If we're doing it ourselves, read through the passage. If there's no words that you don't understand or know, look them up. I have discovered this recently, that I stopped looking up words when I didn't know what they meant. And even in the context of the passages, that if I didn't know what it meant, like I stopped glossing over it. I pulled out my dictionary, y'all, and I dusted it off. And I have been looking up words and learning words. And like my daughter and I have a goal to use the term reverie this week 3 times. And so it's so fun to expand our vocabularies, which we expand our vocabulary how? By reading. So in this case, look up words from the passage that you don't know or understand, or that your kids don't know and understand. And then if you're doing it with your kids, you have them copy the passage onto lined paper, focusing on their handwriting, spelling, and punctuation. And you have them copy it exactly. By the way, they start to see patterns in good writing when they do this. And so do we. We can do this too. And then we go back. So we write it. Again, teenagers, it's fine if they type it. I like to handwrite things as much as possible. Although with my book, I'm typing it out because I can do that faster than I can writing. But I find writing very cathartic. And so just that process of that beautiful ink on the page and the loops as I write, there's something beautiful about that. The next thing we're going to do is, after we've copied the passage, we're going to check for accuracy. We're going to have then compare our copy with the original passage, identify any inaccuracies, spelling, punctuation, and then correct those errors. So we're going to do that with our kids, but then we can do that too, to become better, more prolific writers. And then we correct any mistakes. Like, that's it. That's the whole thing. Y'all, this is such a simple way to start becoming good writers. And yet it's not being done in the public school system. I don't think it's being done in the private school system either, amongst private schools either. I don't know, because I don't go to a private school. Never have. But I know it certainly was not done when I was in school. And now here I am, 48 years old, feeling like an excited kid again, excited to learn again, by doing this technique to help me become a better writer. This helps our children become better writers. Now, we're going to developmentally, for our kids, start them at an appropriate age when they're able to write a little bit more, like over the age of 8, when they're able to write a little bit longer. You know, at the beginning, they might write a sentence. Of course, when you're a teenager, they could write a paragraph. But as I just read, like, there were authors who copied full books to learn to internalize the cadence and the language of other authors so that they could find their own voices. So that's my charge to you, my friends, is I want you to try copywork with your kids. I want you to try it too. I want you to try it and see what you think. And I'd love to hear how it goes. So that is my message for today. I've been really excited about it. I'm excited for upcoming, again, it's going to be a few weeks before my episodes on what I've discovered with the history of math. But I kind of want to take those math books that I found that are, from the 1800s. One of the books was like 1852 or 1850-ish. And I thought, what if I did an experiment and tried teaching my kids arithmetic the way that they instruct in the book, in these different books? Like, what if I did? I wonder what that would look like. I will update you on mathematics in the future, but it might be a little while because I've got lots of research to get done as far as that goes. Also, our next Wednesday workshop will be in November. It's going to be the first Wednesday in November. That's November the 5th at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. And it's all about Christmas. Y'all, I am so excited about Christmas. I can hardly stand it. I'm not a big fan of Halloween. I just wish we could skip it and just jump right into the Christmas season because I love it. So I've got so many fun things to talk about Christmas school. And I've got some fun goodies to give away that day to share with you. And so, but I will only be doing that to people who come to the workshop live. So you have to be live to win some of the goodies that I have for that day and things that I want to share with you. If you haven't already, you want tips, tricks, ideas, inspiration, encouragement, sign up for the newsletter at schooltohomeschool.com. I'm being brave and writing more. I am, now that everything is passed with my mom, I'm trying to get more consistent with getting that newsletter out. As I mentioned before, my mom's passing kind of did a number on me emotionally more than I anticipated. And so I'm about to get ready to send the newsletter out right now. And so with that, my friends, you are doing so much better than you think you are. You made the right choice pulling your kids so they will not be subpar human beings. You are doing so much better than you think you are. You got this. And we will talk next week.